This screencast lecture introduces our discussion of offer doctrine. In our graphical map of the course, an offer is the first stage in the process of contract formation. We know that contractual obligations are consensual. That's why contract law requires both parties to manifest their assent to a bargain. Also remember that the bargain theory of consideration requires the parties' manifestations of assent to be reciprocal. Each must be sought in exchange for the other. So how is the assent requirement expressed in the relevant sections of the Restatement and the UCC? As you've seen, Restatement Section 17 requires mutual assent. Section 22 explains that parties usually show their assent to a contract by making and accepting an offer. In Section 24 we learn that an offer is a manifestation of willingness to enter into a bargain, so made as to justify another person in understanding that his assent to that bargain is invited and will conclude it. The parallel provision of the UCC, Section 22041, states a very permissive, intent-based test for establishing mutual assent. A contract for the sale of goods may be made in any manner sufficient to show agreement, including conduct by both parties which recognizes the existence of such a contract. These sections embody the requirement of mutual assent, but they also give us a useful technique for identifying whether a party's actions constitute an offer. As the excerpt from Arthur Corbin explains, an offer confers on the offeree the power to create a contract by manifesting assent to that offer. That's all that's required. So we ask ourselves whether it's reasonable to understand what the purported offeror has done in these terms. Would a reasonable person believe that the alleged offer gave her the power to form a contract by accepting? How do we decide? The best approach is to focus on the text, either written or oral, of the purported offer and on the context in which it was made. Ask yourself, does it appear from the text and context that the purported offeror intended to give the supposed offeree the power to form a contract by accepting? I have two final observations about the analysis of offers. First, you should note that I referred earlier to whether it was reasonable for the offeree to think that the purported offeror intended to give her the power to form a contract by accepting. The word reasonable should immediately bring to your mind discussion of objective intent to contract in Lucy against Zemmer. Although courts used to require a subjective meeting of the minds, you know that we now apply an objective manifestation of assent theory. As we've seen, the difference can be overstated. Both the Restatement and the UCC are committed to the objective theory, but most of the time, objective and subjective intent travel together. If you manifest intent, you almost always mean to do so, and thus have subjective intent too. As we saw in Lucy, cases finding mutual assent generally include evidence of both objective and subjective intent. What the objective theory implies is that we also find assent when a party has negligently manifested intent to contract. In other words, if you had reason to know that the other party would think you were agreeing to a contract, then you'll be bound. This exception is what the objective theory buys you. Second, you should be aware that there's something of a mild presumption against finding that statements are an offer. Courts are concerned to protect preliminary negotiations, as you can see in Restatement Section 26. They don't want to impose contractual liability prematurely, out of fear that parties won't be able to discuss potential deals freely. With this information and your reading, you know enough to be dangerous. Thanks for listening.